Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to another Premier Pundits live podcast. It is 8:31, the 17th of December. We're coming to the end, I think, of game week 13. We've just had Burnley draw at Villa Park, and Manchester United are currently one each at Bramall Lane. Fingers crossed, Marcus Rashford, my captain this week, this saviour, finally will he come good for me? But anyway, without any further ado, because it's a very special episode, things to tell you, things to do, things to win even. Mr. McKenna in the house. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, and talking about winning, it's the festive time of the year, and we thought it would be great, it would be appropriate to be able to give back to the community and let them enjoy with the festivities too. So just for the people to explain, we've got a little bit of We're in the Money. But the whole point is we're giving back to the community. You'll be in the money over this festive period. You can win £50 by just signing up to HotMic. I know, to the coffers. You'll be spending this kind of dollar, big money, and it's so easy to do. You just have to get one of your friends or your family, get a few people to sign up to HotMic and use the code Ben10 when you're signing up. That will get you subscribed to us. Then the final thing that you have to do is put comments in the comment section, join in with the chat, and then that's it. Easy as that. You can be in to win a free £50. You don't have to pay anything. It's not like a lottery. We're giving it free. All you have to do is just join in with a chat, sign up with a few accounts, and then you'll have a great old time. And if you stick around, maybe your friends and family that you've signed up will enjoy HotMic, enjoy listening to us every week, because we're going, I think it's Monday, Thursday now, so kind of the set date, apart from over this festive period where we'll keep you up to date. But oh my gosh, Anthony Martial has just scored in the Manchester United game. I'm watching back to see if Fernandes is involved with that one, because I've got
Rashford.
Yeah, now see, I want Rashford to be involved for my lovely man Ben here, but it seems like it's going to be Pogba for the assist. Not one of your favourites there, Ben, but at least it's not the F word, Fernandes, involved with that. And the reason why I don't want Fernandes involved, I don't want his sweaty mitts on any sort of assists or goal, because I've had a terrible game week, and we've had the positive there of winning a prize, getting people involved, and I'm happy to give back to the community because they give so much to us getting involved. But my God, this has been another dreadful FPL game week. Ben, do you want to start us off with your team? Do you have any positive news, or is it the same for you, not being a good one?
Look, definition of not a very good one certainly isn't my definition of not a very good one, because we are singing from different hymn sheets here. I'm 42 points as it stands without any bonus to be added, and it will result in a green arrow. So for that, I'm thankful. I liked a little bit more, of course. Martinez, I said he wouldn't come into my team. I couldn't get rid of him. And I couldn't bring myself to start Leno again. So happy with the Martinez play. We have Chilwell, who returns an assist. I like Neto. Neto is one of me transfers in ahead of game week 12. And he returned 9 points, so that's good. In Rashford. So like I say, we're 34 minutes in, and he's already and currently sitting on 12 points. So, look, it's not too bad. If I could get anywhere near 50 points, that would be, you know what? And Rashford should have scored there as well. Decent save from Rams. But you would expect Rashford to score that. If I get anywhere near 50 points, I will consider that massive win. Also, on the flip side to that, I'm also in the money for fan team. Now, I've got 2 players playing tonight. I've got players above me, teams that don't have any involvement. My 2 involvement tonight is Maguire and Fernandez. A decent haul from Fernandez would probably see a 3-digit return in terms of, I keep your fingers crossed, but also I know if it doesn't win, then you'll be happy. So if you're happy, then I'm happy.
Well, that's nice to say. Sharing the love there, because as you proclaimed the other week, it's I'm your on-air husband. So there you go. We're living the dream here. But moving it on to my team, it has been another poor week, and what breaks my heart most is I played my wild card, just 1 week ago, game week 12. I pulled the trigger. I was kind of reluctant to do so. But then I thought it's coming up to the festive fixture compactness. And, thankfully, in many ways, I have played my wild card because this game week, Balbuena missed out. There was no kind of huge warning about it. We had the Masuaku chat before we went into this game week, and you warned me about that. So I brought Balbuena in. And the super annoying thing is that I said to myself, you know what? I'll save myself 0.2. I'll keep that just in case I want to upgrade a player. And so I won't get Kufal. I'll get Balbuena. Well, it's come to kick me in the shins once again. Kufal walked away with a assist this game week. He was involved. He looked good. And I think, maybe I've done it to myself, but he got the 3 bonus points as well. If I just spent that extra 0.2, I would have been in the money. I would have been great. I would have walked away for a pretty good game week. So overall, I'm on 40 points all out. Grealish didn't do anything. I had a 0 from Diaz, 0 from Balbuena because obviously he didn't play. The only kind of scorers this week for me were Robertson with an assist, Salah with a goal, who, again, I probably should have captained him, but I was thinking, it's Tottenham, they're going to defend deep and everything. Bamford and Wilson actually did notch up some things, but one of the most annoying things is that I had Neto on my bench. So it
stings.
It does sting. I probably should get a cream for that because it really does sting. It's not very nice at the moment, but in terms of it, I'll end with 46 points because Taylor's coming off my bench at the moment. So, barring Fernandez doing something, I have a small green arrow again. A movement in the right direction, don't get me wrong, but only about 20,000 places. I mean, when I played this wildcard, I was expecting quite a few green arrows over the next few game weeks building into the new year. I was dead excited. We had it on the show. We talked it through, and a lot of the choices that I made sense. The only one that probably was a bit of a weird one was De Bruyne instead of Fernandez. But then Fernandez and De Bruyne, I think they're about equal in choices. But the others, I would not say any one of them are quote-unquote a bad choice. But a good choice here, Martial almost through on goal there. Manchester United looking up for this game here. I'm just hoping Sheffield United can keep them at bay for a little bit while longer. As long as maybe it's Rashford. I'll allow Rashford, and maybe somehow Grealish gets involved in this game as well. But there's quite a bit to discuss this game week, actually. We're going to half focus on the game. We're going to half focus on FPL. But going into this, obviously, it's another super quick turnaround, but obviously it's the more usual Saturday date is when the deadline is. So make sure that you've got your team sorted by 11 a.m. on Saturday morning for game week 14. And then that goes through to what we've been used to as the usual Monday night fixture. We'll be talking on that Chelsea-West Ham game. But going into this weekend, Ben, any big injury news or any big injury returns that we can look forward to, just look forward to?
Look, we obviously had a glut of Premier League fixtures last night. 6 games in total. So the players post-match will be assessed, over the coming sort of 24 to 48 hours, depending on when those teams are involved again. One of the I suppose would be for Everton. Alan, he's picked up a hamstring injury. Not necessarily a huge fantasy in terms of maybe Everton outputs and just the way they set up and who'll come in. It may have a slight knock-on effect. I'd be very, very surprised if he was to feature at all during the Christmas period. Looking just at the mechanism of injury and seeing how bad that was. Across at Fulham, Scott Parker's confirmed that Bobby Reid, he also picked up a thigh injury. And him, along with the likes of Lookman, have been popping up on my timeline with people, just making tentative inquiries about, whether those players are good assets to bring in. We've certainly seen an upturn in form from Fulham in recent matches. Of course, he got the draw with Liverpool, well-deserved draw, that, and maybe a little bit unfortunate, 3 points. So they're good players who are maybe good bench warmers, good backup players in terms of that. In Liverpool today, we have seen Joel Matip on the training pitches and also Thiago Alcantara. Now, that's great news. However, I would always, urge slight caution with players being spotted on the training pitches, because a return to train isn't necessarily a return to play. Certainly with Joel Matip, I think Joel Matip. I mean, who's he? Joel Matip. He was suffering from a back spasm, so that's one that we certainly could see him recovering from. But obviously, Thiago has been out a little bit longer since the Merseyside derby. It was that tackle from Richarlison that earned him a red card. So there are no guarantees with regards to him, and certainly not in that starting 11 anyway, because he's going to be lacking a little bit of sharpness and a little bit of match fitness. Newcastle. A few people asking about Alan Saint-Maximin. Question marks over whether it's his absence is calf-related, COVID-related, or a falling out with Steve Bruce. Now, to address rumours regarding a falling out, this was in the build-up to the Palace game. Apparently, local media reports are never far from the truth, but they say that was a bit of falling out with Steve Bruce because he was going to be dropped from that starting 11. That coincided with a minor calf injury. Now, of course, Newcastle postponed the following game week with Aston Villa. And there's been no really official update from Steve Bruce. He's come out and he said, those affected by COVID, I'm not going to be talking about, I'm going to respect the privacy and the wishes of the players. Therefore, I suspect that Saint-Maximin is one of those players that was struck down with coronavirus. Now, Steve Bruce has said that, there are 2 players in particular that have been, really hard hit. That's really laid them low. If I think his words are along the lines of, don't underestimate COVID-19. If you think it isn't real, if you think it isn't serious, then, you want to check out my 2 guys who are young, fit, healthy, elite level players. And, they've been sort of laid out. So that's quite serious. And it sounds as if, there's a possibility there's Fabian Shaw, who we also haven't seen. And we also haven't seen Jamal Lascelles, but he was carrying a little bit of a thigh problem as well. Elsewhere, and into this game week, maybe 2 question marks. Say these players are being assessed, but Jared Bowen picked up an ankle sprain in the warm-up to last night's game. He did manage to play 80 minutes. However, what I would say was, when your adrenaline's pumping, when you're getting ready for a pitch, you can play through these things, but once he takes his boot off in the cold light of day, there may be a lot of swelling, and it could be that, there may be question marks with regards to his availability. And also Aaron Cresswell, he's been on a lot of fantasy managers' radar in recent times. He picked up a slight hip/groin problem against Leeds last weekend, and then he missed a few sessions, came back in, and he's also suffered an ankle injury. So one to watch. But like you say, David Moyes will provide an update ahead of their game, and I believe they don't play it until Monday, if I've got that right. So those extra recovery days will certainly help.
And with all this injury news, obviously everybody should be heading over to Premier Injuries to keep up to date with that. Most up to date, most accurate injury news. But what I would also say, a question to you, Ben, is you've described some of these injuries here as maybe knocks or niggles or things that don't on the surface seem too worrying. But because of COVID, because of the fixture congestion, do you think managers, say for example the Creswell thing, probably if he had a week to maybe run it off to train or relax it, he'd be back into the squad the next game week. But with something like this, will he possibly miss the next game just because these managers are not going to take any caution, that they're going to they're not going to take any risks, they're going to be very cautious during this very unique season?
I think in particular with Cresswell, there are two schools of thought. If it's the groin stroke hip, the soft tissue, the muscular tears, strains, a little bit of tightness, if that's an issue, following the game against Palace, then that would be more of a concern given the quick turnaround. Like I say, with West Ham playing on the Monday night, that's slightly better because it gives them, a little bit more recovery time. Had it been the Saturday, then definitely that would have made things a little bit more of a worry. If it's the ankle, then you would assume that if he's completing 90 minutes, it isn't too bad, and it's one that could be sort of heavily strapped and fixed, and maybe that's not as much as a concern. So again, like I say, it depends on really what the issues are with that. If it's ankle, very good chance. If it's maybe the groin or hip flexor, then I'd put him at 50-50 at this point.
And just to, we're talking about 50-50s here. We're halfway through the game here with Manchester United, Sheffield United. The team have looked good, Manchester United. The initial kind of goal conceded, and then the side have almost eased their way back in. But what I would say is, and I think this is kind of the perennial story with Sheffield United, is when they do take shots, they're usually of high quality. That was the story last season, not so much this season. And so in terms of expected goals, actually, Manchester United and Sheffield United are neck and neck. Sheffield United on 0.95 XG and Manchester United on 0.93. And just before we analyse what's gone on in that first half there, I will say that Aston Villa, they should have walked away with all 3 points. 2.03 XG, which is no mean feat. And then they kept Burnley to just 0.28 XG. They're going to be kicking themselves that they didn't put any of those chances away. And Anand has just joined us, one of our big fans. Great to see you in there, Anand. You missed
friend of the show.
You missed our big "We're in the Money" intro. We had money flying around. We had music from the 30s. We had a great intro. But good to see you joining us at halftime. And just quickly, I don't know if you're able to hear. It is 2-1 to Manchester United against Sheffield United. Ben, you're quite happy at the moment because of Rashford, but are you quite happy as well with almost his importance in this Man United performance? Because he's looked bright today. In fact, I think this is probably one of the best performances I've seen from Manchester United so far this season. Yes, the XG isn't a lot, but they've looked more back to themselves in terms of their ability to play through the teams. I haven't seen this kind of almost energy in the side so far this season. What do you think on that?
Look, what I've seen so far, I've been really impressed. The perennial, to United need to go a goal behind every time. I think this might be the 7th game that they went behind, and obviously they've come back to win all the others, and now they've took the lead. So that is a good sign. So there's always hope. Do they need that goal to kick them into gear? For me, Rashford has been pretty poor of late. I don't know how much of an impact that shoulder injury that he's been carrying. He's certainly getting the minutes from Ollie. And so it's great to see the trust that that he wants to put in him, and also his importance to the team. And I really think it's about time sort of Rashford starts to deliver, because he's not that young, fresh kid coming into a team where he's, maybe afforded the luxury of time. Even though he's only still, I don't know what he is he 22, 23 or something now? He's probably considered, one of the senior heads of that squad, and one of the players that you really need to be stepping up and delivering performances. And I think Champions League, he's done all right, but Premier League, I think he's really struggled, and he's just looked a little bit out of sorts. But if you want your confidence, if you want your, if you need a little boost, then Sheffield United, the way they're playing at the moment, their confidence is fragile. Gets that goal, took his goal really well. It was a decent pick out from Lindelof. Great first touch. Needed a beat. Sheffield United defender was coming across. I thought he would get a foot in, and he took it nice and early, and that probably deceived Ramsdale just how he early took that. And yeah, very happy. That's my captaincy pick. And on this form, and Sheffield United, the thing is, what I like about this is Sheffield United is a draw is no good, really. They're marooned at the bottom of that table. I'm one of the few people that I still think maybe Sheffield United aren't going to go down. I think they're a hell of a lot better than the league performance suggests. And I still think they're a half decent side. They don't turn that bad overnight. And it's just, for me, they lack a goal scorer, somebody who can, put the ball in the back of the net. I question maybe Chris Wilder and his summer acquisitions. You question why you would bring in Brewster. Certainly, for that amount of money, given that Sheffield United are working within, quite a tight, transfer budget. They have their financial constraints. You spend 20 plus million, or whatever it was, on Brewster, and one, he isn't proven in the top flight. He hadn't even done that, and secondly, he's not even getting in your starting 11. And I find that a little bit. If as a supporter, I would find that decision, difficult to take. You're not in a position to be able to buy, for the future, and Brewster may or may not be that kind of gamble. It's the here and now, and it's the present, where you need somebody who's proven, certainly at the highest level, to be able to score goals. And for me, that's what Sheffield United really, really lack, just to ease that pressure and that burden on the rest of the squad. Because you see, as soon as they concede a goal, heads are down, confidence is shattered, and you're just wondering, well, how are we going to get back into this? McGoldrick scored tonight, but again, it was handed to them on a plate by a howler from Dean Henderson.
Yeah, the thing with Sheffield United, and I really enjoyed seeing them last season. I've loved the Chris Wilder story. I was a paid up member of the clergy of the Church of Chris Wilder. I loved kind of reading from the hymn sheet, and I like that his football had foibles as well. This overlapping centre backs was something that was really great to see, something almost pioneering in the Premier League, or something we hadn't seen for a long while. And I like that was coming from a newly promoted side. It wasn't from, say, an Antonio Conte coming to Chelsea and imposing a new system. This was, somebody coming up to the Premier League and doing things differently, and it worked so well. I think you're right that the summer acquisitions weren't good. I'm not sure about Ramsdale, because Henderson was stellar last season. I think he had XG prevented of 12 goals or something like that. He was ridiculously good. Maybe world class level or near world class level, his performances last season. And looking at the kind of XG delta this season, the fact that the team have underperformed their goals conceded by 3 already, so they've let in 3 more goals than they should have, already kind of speaks to me that the goalkeeper is not as good as Dean Henderson. I mean, let's be honest, not many will be. But they needed somebody. I mean, look at Newcastle. They've got Carl Darlow and Dubravka. There are better goalkeepers out there. And I did question why they brought Ramsdale, because Bournemouth were hardly, the best kind of defensive side. I wouldn't say that Ramsdale kept Bournemouth in a lot of games. I would have looked elsewhere. I mean, they should have probably gone in for somebody like Martinez. It was a bit odd to me. Then, as you said there, the other problem was Sheffield United, good defensively, but up top, where the goals coming from? For me, I think that the story always is with teams staying up in the Premier League is a good defence, and so I don't blame Sheffield United kind of predicating their whole Premier League football on a strong defence, because it just logically makes sense. You'll probably be all right if you can, stop out opposition. But what seems to have happened this season is they've lost the defensive rigidity and they don't have a goal scorer. So they don't have anything kind of going for them. They're letting so many big chances more this season. They're letting more goal attempts in the box this season. They're just not playing the football. I think O'Connell is a huge miss. I think, the fact that they lost Dean Henderson as well, who'd been with them for 2 seasons. So that kind of is a big loss in terms of psychology and team-wise.
Do you know what I think as well, what we kind of, and it's quite often overlooked, is this ongoing, I was going to say contract situation saga with Lundstrom. That's all going to come to an end probably in January. He had such a pivotal role to play in that Sheffield United setup, particularly first half of the season. And, I think Chris Weiler he's been very disappointed that they weren't unable to agree a new deal, an extension. And therefore he's found himself on the peripherals of that starting 11 now. And I think that's just, again, maybe just knocked the balance of the team somewhat. I mean, if you look at the likes of Fleck, who's come back off a fairly, medium-term injury, hasn't hit the ground running again, and it's where are the players coming in from the bench to challenge these players, to push them to, we've seen Berg already go off tonight, so that's going to be a big loss for Sheffield United. And Pardew, I haven't seen a lot of the lad, but it's a big ask for a young kid who's coming in on loan, to be delivering the types of performances that Sheffield United need to keep them in the top tier of football. So there's a lot of things going against him, and it could come down to, I think, Chris Weiler. The board's got to back him during January to maybe strengthen in some key areas, and hopefully, like I say, for their sake, they start to string a couple of results together. Because if this continues now until Christmas, then I think they're going into the new year, and that's it. They've gone.
Yeah, the writing's on the wall, and the kind of data shows that as well. I think there's only 3 or 4 clubs in Premier League history that escaped the drop after being bottom at Christmas. One of them actually being Crystal Palace under Roy Hodgson. I mean, he's a fantastic manager in of himself. But yeah, looking at that front line, Anand has mentioned it as well. He said so toothless up top. It's a fair point. Mousset, Brewster, an ageing McGoldrick and Sharp and McBurney, probably championship level. They need somebody just a little bit cut above the rest. And again, echoing your point, they must have a little bit of money because they spent big on Brewster. They spent fairly big on Berge. I think, the club are trying to work within their budget. Berge might be one for the future and could be part of like a data signing that we kind of see at Midtjylland or Brentford. So that one's kind of all right, and he's probably been their best player, one of their best players so far this season. But why did they get Brewster? I don't think there was an amazing data set. He wasn't a data darling. He wasn't looking amazing. So I don't know why they've kind of invested in him for the future. I don't know why they still got McGoldrick, Sharp on their books. They're obviously a bit too old now, but then saying that, McGoldrick is the one on the scoreline today. But they need to do some real big investment. They need some choices within the squad. And I don't know, but maybe some backup to O'Connell, because, you know, since he's been injured, the side just haven't looked good at all. And, you know, the funny thing is, I talked to from StatsBomb, Ted Knutson, about this. He said the team are obviously a defensive side, because look how many defensive players they got in their squad. You know, you look at it, they've got like probably 12 defenders just in that first team squad. And then you look at the strikers or forwards, and there's less than half as many. So they need to sort out their defence, because that's what the whole team is built around. And I don't know if that needs to come from a signing. I don't know if that needs to come from a new goalkeeper or a backup goalkeeper, because I'm just not all that impressed with Ramsdale. But the second half is about to start, and I think, Ben, we've got some interesting announcements to talk about later. We've got to talk about the return of Big Sam. We've got the free hit and blank game weeks that we've got coming up in game week 18, 19. But the first thing that I wanted one of the first things I wanted to bring up to you was actually this announcement of concussion substitutes. Do you have any information of how this is going to work when it comes into the Premier League?
Yeah, so I've only skated up because of the midweek fixtures. I've only sort of read the major headlines, and I haven't scratched beneath the surface on how it's going to impact. It's certainly not what the clubs had pushed for in terms of what we all wanted to see was temporary substitutions, was players taken out and these temporary substitutions being brought on. As it stands, I mean, it's a step in the right direction, and it's certainly better than where we were before. But we're not completely there yet. So for those who haven't seen or haven't heard, basically clubs are allowed to have 2 concussion substitutes on the bench, which won't count towards their substitution quota. If there was a 3rd concussion or suspected during a game, then you would have to use a normal substitute for that. So it allows sort of, again, managers to err on the side of caution. So which should be the case anyway. I mean, regardless of who you've got on the bench and who you can possibly come in, the overriding notion is you have a duty of care towards players. And if your medical team the first thing they're looking at is mechanism of injury. So before they're even talking to the player, they're looking at, right, how did that injury occur? What happened? If it's a collision, let's look at the David Luiz and the Raul Jimenez as an example. Now, you're looking at 2 players. You're going onto that pitch, and your first thought, the first thing that goes through your mind is David Luiz is concussed. He's coming off. It's almost like, you're coming off, and you're going to have to prove to me otherwise. You're seeing Raul Jimenez, who's unconscious. We didn't even know the severity of the injury, but just looking at the nature of the injury, you're going. So then you're sitting up and you're talking to the player, and you're doing memory recall, you're doing exercises, and you're going through that whole sort of process. Now, what clubs and everybody was pushing for was to have this 10-minute assessment where you could take the player off. They could be assessed maybe independently by a qualified specialist, clinician, medical practitioner, so they can make just a completely impartial judgment call on whether a player is concussed or not. Again, you would like to think that on-field physicians aren't influenced by external factors, i.e. crowds, managers, status and profile of the player. We can't guarantee that. Secondly, as we heard with Jan Vertonghen, there is still a heavy reliance on the player as well. And they've got to be, they've got to open those lines of communication. They've got to be honest. They've got to tell things. And if players are, because some of the symptoms of concussions aren't visible, if they're just, you can't spot them, no matter how long they're off for or who's doing the assessment, if the player's telling you they're fine and there are no visible issues, then you have to assume that they're fine to continue, as was the case with Jan Vertonghen, who then comes out almost, I think, 18 months after the event. I struggled for 9 months with headaches, dizziness, fuzziness after training, post-match. I just wasn't right. I should have been taken out, but I wasn't honest. So there's still a long way to go, and I think with concussion protocol, this is an area which will develop, which will change, over the coming years. This, what we see now is not what we'll see in maybe 3 or 5 or 7 years down the line. So the substitution rule is, like I say, a step in the right direction, but it isn't. It probably isn't where we would like to see it at this point in time. It still leaves that, there's still that grey area around, whether a player should stay or just be taken off. I mean, the Football Association directive is, if in doubt, take them out. That, and there shouldn't be any. But what it is, it's. I say a directive. It's not a directive. It's almost like an advisory throwaway. It's interpretation.
Just interrupt here. A great opportunity, and Rashford has put it into the back of the net. Oh my goodness! Here, yes. We've got a live reaction to this. Rashford has scored for Manchester United.
Do you know what?
Martial with the assist. Team are looking damn good going forward here. I mean, Rashford himself, a great performance.
If I had Rashford as my captain on fan team, then I really would have been in the money. Obviously Fernandes was involved again. I think he played the ball to Martial, who laid it off to Rashford, and it was a great little touch. And I mean, I'll take that goal every day of the week. But we spoke about Ramsdale, and I tell you what, that is an absolute shocker.
Howler.
I mean, it was those question marks around the second goal with Martial. He went in. I sort of give him the benefit of the doubt that the ball bounced up, and he was maybe. You need to keep and be brave in those situations. He wasn't. That one there was just very, very, very poor. I mean. Sheffield United, I was going to say, would probably be looking at the Manchester United goal thinking, there's the goalkeeper we want. But after the Sheffield United opener, you might be thinking, well, you can keep, I'm glad we got rid of Henderson. But, yeah, I mean, Ramsdale, I think we talked about the Berg and we talked about the Brewster signings as being big money. I think Ramsdale came in at around maybe 18 million mark as well. So,
yeah.
It's a big outlay,
and he's not delivering the goods. I mean, like you said, real howler, great game for Rashford. And we just had a message from Anand. He said, "Guys, I benched Morris after discussing this in the last podcast." Well, I'm glad that our information actually came through and helped out, because I remember there was this little debate that we all had. I had. Worries that somehow Morris was going to do well after we said that, you should bench him, but seems to have worked out well. I mean, this is the problem with the Pep roulette wheel, and this is why having your squad of players, maybe I've gone a bit too boring with some of my choices with the template. with just a few kind of differentially choices. But every player in my squad I know is going to play. And I think this is the point over this Christmas COVID period is differentials are nice, like Mahrez. He can bang so many points. But to the same extent, if he's not guaranteed the minutes, I'm not really interested because, you know, like Balbuena, just out of the blue, injured. You know, any of these kind of players could suddenly, just a little knock and then they're not playing. Cresswell kind of injury. These sorts of things can rear their head, and so yes, maybe my funds are spread out a little bit on my bench, on a few players, but then I'm happy each game week that at least I'm going to field 11. I've got Balbuena sitting there, and then all of a sudden, oh well, I've got Taylor coming on. It's 6, it's still a clean sheet, and Burnley are doing the bits once again. So fair dues to them. Just continuing, doubling back on this discussion about the concussion subs. I mean, we'll get on to my thoughts and feelings in a minute, but there's a few kind of feelings that I have, a few questions about it. Is there a chance for exploitation? And I don't know if you've read these kind of ring fence rules around the 2 concussion subs, but will these 2 concussion subs be different from other substitutes? So I don't mean like they'll sit away from the bench, but will they kind of go David Luiz and Nketiah for Arsenal are the 2 allocated concussion subs, or is it just Arsenal can have 2 players, anybody on the bench, but they're just 2 concussion subs?
Yeah, I mean, look, because of the nature of the game and the fact that it's a contact sport, you know, it would be impossible for you to say, well, actually, it's these 2 players are concussion subs, because you could be talking about a goalkeeper or a centre forward or a centre back, you know, so you just don't know how those injuries can occur. So yeah, it literally will be just. But is it, you know, touching upon it, is it open to exploitation? It is. It is. Of course, it is. There's going to be, and that's going to be the difficult. It's how it's managed. If you can imagine, I don't know, around Christmas time, around double game weeks, you know, teams playing 3 matches within a 8 or 9 day period. You're coming up to 60 minutes. You've already made 3 substitutions. One of your players indicates to the bench, my hamstring's feeling a little bit tight. Carry on, son, carry on. Next time you go for a head of the ball, you know, fake a little bit of an injury. You know, fake a head injury, go down. You know, if anything happens, and we'll bring you off and we'll get you changed. You would like to think that these things don't happen and people may dress it up as gamesmanship. Ultimately, it's cheating. And look, I don't know how this will be managed, how they will minimise. I presume that if clubs are found out and players are found out, they will come down extremely hard on those involved. And maybe that's a way to manage it. But look, it's going to be difficult. I don't know if it's, you know, you can only come off with a concussion sub once that independent assessment has taken place. But then you go back to the fact that, well, actually, you'll restart the game with 10 men. And if they're saying that it takes 10 minutes to maybe give a good indication of whether you've been or concussed or not, then are you prepared to play 10 minutes with 10 men? That's why the temporary substitution made more sense. But I don't really understand the authorities' thinking as to why that hasn't been pushed through. It may be just a process where they look to trial. I know they're looking to trial different ways of managing the situation, and you know, hopefully the teams and those involved, the stakeholders, will come together and agree on a path to move forward with.
So one of my questions as well, this is more of a discussion point and my feelings, but what I get from this, and don't get me wrong, I think concussions are terrible, but why is this not just for all horrific kind of injuries? My kind of thought and feeling is, a leg break or something, potentially career ending. Why is that not given special precedent as well? Why is it just for head injuries? I get that head injuries can cause all sorts of complications, but more often than not, the real kind of injuries that we see on a football pitch are actually a terrible leg break, arm or dislocated shoulder. And these can be potentially career ending, or at least a few months out, and definitely a visit to the hospital. Why can't football, or do you believe that football should just have emergency substitutions, again, these two, so that all kind of horrific injuries are kind of catered for, and that we don't have to have this worry of, oh, well, we're going to force this player to play on, or a team is kind of unfairly almost penalised just because of a freak accident like, I don't know, Ramsey's terrible injury against Stoke.
You make a very good point. And it takes us back to a conversation that I had with a guy from Australia that I met at a conference at the Camp Nou in Barcelona. Now, he was an ankle specialist. He's a huge advocate for ankle protection. And he believes that obviously clubs have a care of duty, players are their employees, and he says support and rehab equipment, so on and so, as almost as PPE. And if clubs aren't providing the correct PPE for their players, then they are, putting their players at risk. Now, like I say, it's where do you draw the line? And it's a topic of discussion that could go on for a long time. But concussion and head injuries form a very, very small percentage of the overall incidence rates that we've seen. So in terms of the investment of money, time, resource, it's probably, it outweighs it by far, particularly when you look at the number of knee injuries, ankle problems, so on and so forth. Concussions are the headline grabbers. The initial concussion itself isn't the major issue initially. We're not talking about repeated concussions over time. I'm just talking the one-off concussion, maybe. The issue with maybe leaving a player on if they've suffered a concussion is a secondary impact to the head. Now, the chances, the odds of suffering a serious implications from a secondary impact are huge. So, and yeah, you could be talking life-threatening and certainly life-altering. So that's why there's the issues around concussion in the first place and whether a player should stay on or stay off. But I want to touch upon something like you would have heard of Gabriel Batistuta, Argentinian football, brilliant striker, set Serie A light. Fiorentina's, I think, was one of the clubs that springs to my mind. Now, obviously retired a long time ago. Now he is, post-football career, being in the news, and he's basically in so much pain that he said, look, I just cannot manage it. I just want you to chop my legs off, because he suffered with ongoing ankle problems that were taped up, wrapped up, or he had injections for. You picked up and so it's not necessarily just the big career-threatening injuries that you see maybe on the pitch in front of you, which could be, but it's those little knocks and niggles over time that occur that are really affecting, the long-term health of these players as well. The difficult, head injuries and concussions are very much in vogue at the moment, and I think if you in recent times, if you look at maybe Ryan Mason is a one. He's retired, unfortunately. Fractured skull in that collision with Gary Cahill. the Raul Jimenez. When you get something really severe as that, then most things sort of pale into insignificance. If you're talking about maybe some of the high profile, say, leg breaks or what have you, quite often that they look a lot worse than they are. I mean, one of the worst I've ever seen in my life would be the David Boost injury. I don't know if it might be a little bit before your time. If you haven't seen it, maybe YouTube. Was it Peter Schmeichel? I think it was Coventry versus Manchester United. Peter Schmeichel was actually sick on the pitch. It finished David Boost. But, those are very rare in the grand scheme of things. You see compound fractures where bones coming out of legs. Unless you talk about maybe severing a major artery, then most of these things can be fixed with screws and plates, and they're not going to endanger life. Head injuries, the incident rates may be fewer, but the risk is certainly there. And I don't know. And then you weigh players' health up with football as an entertaining game, and it's about money. It's all about money as well. And you're talking about the stakeholders' involvement. Where do you draw the line? Do you have 10 subs? And then do you say, well, look, if there's any injury, and then you're going into the laws of the game. And so it is a fine balancing act. And look, I do agree with you. You could almost have like a serious injury sub, so just not just concussion, but anybody who has a really serious. Then how do you determine what's serious? I remember Theo Walcott against Tottenham, I think a few years ago, suffered a knee injury, stretchered off. The crowd were booing him. Tottenham, and as he went off, he went 2-0, and he was laughing.
I remember that 2-0.
Yeah, 2-0. ACL rupture, 9-10 months out. I mean, you wouldn't at any moment of time when Theo Walcott was getting treatment or doing that, you would never have thought, well, that's a serious knee ligament injury. He's out for almost a year. So again, it's I mean, you see players almost try to play on as well with the ACL ruptures. I had one, and it was the most painful, excruciating pain I've ever dealt with in my life. So I just think it's difficult to manage, and it's difficult to you're just opening you're opening up the rabbit hole then.
That must have been painful. That must have been painful because you used to watch Titus Bramble play weekly for Newcastle. So I mean, come on now, that is truly horrific. Just on that 2-0 Theo Walcott thing, I used to work at Arsenal in the shop, and what was funny to me was, it's kind of the cliche, the joke that whenever Tottenham used to beat Arsenal, they used to make DVDs, mugs, T-shirts. It was like winning the World Cup twice for them. And Theo Walcott did the 2-0 thing when he came off the pitch. And what was funny was I didn't like it because I thought this was lowering Arsenal to their level. They made T-shirts with just 2-0, with Theo Walcott's hands. And I don't know what happened. I don't want to make accusations here, but we were told that we couldn't keep selling those shirts because there was disagreements with Tottenham Hotspur about whether that was fair to sell them. And I thought that was a really fascinating thing that, they're allowed to sell DVDs, T-shirts. I'm sure a lot of the Tottenham crowd have tattoos of the unique occasions when Arsenal have been beaten by Tottenham, but for that one single moment, which I don't think even was offensive, it wasn't like he turned his fingers the other way round, it was literally 2-0. Apparently that was far too offensive for Tottenham to deal with, so I don't know, the Lily Whites were obviously crying to themselves about that incident there, but no, I think it's useful to talk about this. I think we will see some interesting, and I think it's a step in the positive direction, with these concussion substitutes. My point is, I'm not in opposition. If anything, I think more needs to be done, because I think it kind of buys into, again, ideas of, masculinity in football. And maybe this comes from the 70s, 60s, maybe even earlier. But I talked to my dad, and there's stories of certain football clubs, and the medical staff were basically a bloke with a sponge coming on to the pitch with a cold ice bucket, and if you weren't up and running within 30 seconds, you were verbally abused by the manager that you're putting it on, and things like that. And I think that the fact that there isn't kind of provisions for, and I know it would be so hard for serious injuries, but it just seems the only fair thing that all kind of serious injuries should be given, a leg breaker. Obviously, they're not life-threatening. I think concussion should get the precedent of the situation. But my point is that I don't feel any team should be unfairly kind of punished because of an accident. It just doesn't seem fair that, let's say in this game, a Sheffield United player tackles a Man United player. Why should the Man United team suffer because of an accident from Sheffield United? I'm sure there was no malice intended. They're not like Roy Keane going after Haaland, kind of trying to break legs there. So yeah, let's move it on to, I think, one of the most exciting bits of news. People will call me absolutely mental for saying it, but I call him one of the A-team managers, because if you've got a relegation problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find him, you bring in Sam Allardyce. Obviously, you don't have good memories of him at Newcastle, but I'm putting it out there. I think Big Sam is one of the best of the rest out of the top kind of 6 managers, because what he does at clubs, yes, he kind of comes in and he plays boring football, but he keeps teams up. He keeps the little minnows, thriving in the Premier League. And then quite often when they get rid of him, then they go down. Look at Bolton, Blackburn, Newcastle had a few problems. He stabilised West Ham, saved Crystal Palace. I think his track record kind of speaks for itself. But you let out a bit of a gasp of air there. You've had some uncomfortable looks, like as if I've put in a dodgy tackle on you there. What is your feelings of Big Sam at WBA?
I'm a little bit disappointed that Slaven Bilic maybe wasn't given the time to turn things around. I think he deserved that opportunity. I think the timing was a little bit suspect.
Odd. Because it just got that draw with Man City. I thought that was one of their best performances all season.
They even done quite well against Newcastle. Maybe a little bit unfortunate there. And I heard the Sam Allardyce interview, and one of the questions was, do you got money to spend? Yes, we've got some money. Now, why wasn't Slaven Bilic given that money in the summer? Were the board maybe weren't confident? Were they, why not back the manager when he's in post? When you agree compensation packages, and Sam wouldn't be cheap. So already there's been a little bit of outlay in that. I know what you're saying. I clump all of these almost old school managers together: the Redknaps, the Warnicks, the Aladicis, the Pardew's. They're just like, it's this roundabout, this endless procession where you come in and I almost see it as an easy out. Invest in your manager. Look at Norwich last season. Daniel Farke. I think it would have been easy for the Norwich board to turn around and get rid of Farke. Look at where Norwich are now. Again, top of the Championship, you have that consistency. The manager thrives off that belief as well, knowing that, if I go on a run where we lose 2, 3, 4, 5 games, my job's not at risk. Then it allows them opportunity to invest time and develop the club for the future. Invest in young players and bring them in. If as a manager, like somebody like, let's say Mourinho, who inherently, rarely gives, those development players, younger players, opportunities because, he's a perennial winner. He wants to win. If he doesn't win in those 2 or 3 years, he tends to be gone. If managers were in place and said, right, well, actually, you're going to be here for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Well, yeah, look, let's start blooding some of these youngsters. And I almost just think, like, are West Brom just getting, ideas of grandeur? What exactly do they expect?
Yeah.
Given their squad, given their lack of investment, given their quality, because they're exactly really where they should be. In fact, you could argue that they're probably one place above where everybody expected them to be at the start of the season. So I quite like West Brom as a team, as a club. They're not one of the sides that I, would mind playing. They're pretty attractive on the eye. So there's part of us just thinks, well, if Allardyce keeps them up, then great. But on the other hand, I just think, what? You deserve all you get, and can go down, because I think it's just a little bit of a cop out. Give the managers a chance, an opportunity to. It's not a dire situation. That's what I found surprising. That by no stretch of the imagination would I be saying now, given where West Brom are and the performances that they put together, are West Brom guaranteed to go down? Are they dead cert? No, far from it. So in that respect, yeah, I'm a little bit surprised and maybe a little bit disappointed as well.
I get your feelings there, and I would say that I echo them. I think Bilic has been hard done by 2 Premier League clubs, both beginning with W West something. Maybe he needs to go to maybe an East Side club. Obviously West Side is not working for him, but yeah, exactly. He's obviously on the wrong side of town. But in terms of it, poor old Bilic, I think, he had a pretty good string of performances, maybe not reflected in results, apart from that big draw at Man City. I think that was a huge result. And in terms of FPL, I was mortally pissed off, I won't lie. But in terms of actual recognition of the quality of football on display, I thought, you know what? Bilic has done well here. And when I heard rumours circulating last night that he might be out the door, I thought this is ludicrous. And to kind of, emphasise one of your points here, I think this manager merry-go-round of sacking managers and then trying to replace them, thankfully we've kind of almost seen less of that recently. Last season there wasn't too many kind of chopping and changes. Emery was probably one of the big notable ones, but clubs seem to now realise that this new manager bounce effect, where they get a new manager in, they do all right for 10 to 15 games, but then nothing else happens, there needs to be something deeper. And we've seen this with Brighton, with Graham Potter, and as much as we malign, the style of football, very good opportunity there for Juan Mata to put it into the back of net. And thankfully, no Fernandes involvement there again. He passed to Martial, who passed it through to Mata, but it doesn't matter because nothing happened in the end. But yeah, the whole point is Brighton, Bournemouth, these clubs here, they've struggled, but they've stuck by their managers. Burnley as well are a great kind of example of sticking by the manager, creating a long-term project, and then good things can happen. And I think, Bilic, West Brom, he should have been given more time. If they have money now, why didn't they use it in the summer? I'm very with you there, Ben. But kind of bringing it, because obviously we're talking about FPL and assets and stuff like that. And in terms of Allardyce, I'd say I'd have to disagree with you on the comparison to the likes of Warnock and Pardew, because I think he's a cut above them in many aspects. He does play fairly boring football, but he was one of the kind of data pioneers. When he went to Bolton, he had the war room. He loved number crunching, and he's shrewd with a signing as well. He's a bit like the British FC Midtjylland. He's I suppose we've got the British Midtjylland in Brentford. He was Brentford before Brentford, basically. He was Brentford in Bolton, and I think he is condemned because he plays sometimes negative football. But what I would say is he's also, Mourinho plays negative football, but he wins. Is it pragmatic? Is it understanding the weaknesses in your team? But I think in terms of FPL assets, this makes me interested in West Brom's defence, especially Johnston. He's actually shown some good quality in his ability to save, rack up those save points. When we have maybe a turn in fixtures for West Brom, or even immediately, because we know that the new manager bounce effect is immediate at clubs. Clubs do have this ability to earn more points, concede less, score more after the imposition of a new manager. But the true quality measure of a manager is if they can keep that run going. I think we'll see a shored up West Brom. It makes more of their assets viable. I'm not sure if I'd get them in now because, I'll have to check in terms of fixture difficulty rating. But West Brom, I don't think have good fixtures in the kind of next few games. But then, in the future, like I said, when they've got a good run of fixtures, they might become attractive. So let's have a look. West Brom have Aston Villa, Liverpool, Leeds, Arsenal. Then they have a blank, and then Wolves and West Ham United. I mean, there's a few kind of good opportunities there for their defence, but I'd avoid them for now just because there's some difficult games in there. But talking purely FPL now, Ben, does this suddenly change your opinion on West Brom assets? Are they kind of like Burnley assets in the fact that you might be able to get a cheap defensive bargain that you can rotate from your bench?
Yeah, definitely. I think, first and foremost, Sam will be going in and he'll want to shore up that defence. He'll want to stop the opposition scoring. That's his priority. How soon that can happen remains to be seen. I mean, Allardyce himself talked about, he has a set way of working. How the players respond to that way of working, depends. Different personalities within the squad. He said, he was successful at certain clubs, whereas even though Palace survived, I think he said they lost the first 6 games when he went in, but it was slightly different when he went into Everton. Done all right at West Ham initially in Newcastle. So he needs to go and he, in his own words, assess the strengths and the weaknesses of those players. And yeah, look, I think West Brom, in terms of, they're not too dissimilar to maybe what I see as Sheffield United. And the fact that, defensively, that they're all pretty solid, they can be, midfield, but they just don't have, I like Grant up front, but, he's coming off the back of, I think he's still working his way back up to fitness. You maybe got Charlie Austin, who came in, I think, for his first Premier League appearance at Newcastle. Robertson, ex-Sheffield United, isn't great. They just need a good centre forward for me. Pereira, Diangana are two, decent attacking options. But Diangana was, been out of favour in recent games, really, for under Bilic. So it'd be interesting to see how Allardyce, deals with those players, going forward. But yeah, look, I think once you maybe see an upturn in those fixtures, then some of those West Brom assets in defence are maybe worth some decent, serious consideration.
And we know as well that he's good with his set piece work. Historically, Sam Allardyce knows about marginal gains. He knows that, having the ability to score from dead balls is going to be something that he works on. This might make other assets within the side who are on the dead ball set piece situations more viable as well. But I'm looking at probably one of their centre backs might get a few goals. Maybe not, like you said, in the immediate period. It might take 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 games to get up to full speed. But it does make them more viable. And arguably, I know I don't like the choice, but maybe West Brom have done it at the right time as well. This is the tough Christmas fixture period, but we're not over the halfway point of the season. It's not set in stone, and they do have that kind of redemptive path. Whereas if it's like 5, 10 games before the end of the season, then you'd go, well, just stick it out, stick with Bilic. Whereas now there's this path, this ability to have an alternative. And just kind of looking again at the data for everybody here. So Manchester United have kind of gone into top gear in this second half. They've now produced 1.89 XG, whereas Sheffield United have stood still. At half-time, I said they had 0.97 XG. Well, they've got 0.97 XG as we come towards the end of the match. It's not been a good one, a good second half for them. And in terms of it, there's been, quite a few big chances for Manchester United we've seen in the game, because they've had 14 shots, 7 on target, 3 actual big chances created, whereas Sheffield United have only had 1. So they've been fairly dominant in this fixture. I mean, would you say maybe a criticism of the performance here, Ben, is not putting more chances away? Should they be even more ahead?
I'm disappointed Rashford hasn't got his hat-trick. I'm disappointed for once in my life, for the first time, I'm disappointed that Bruno hasn't registered anything at all. I'm even more disappointed that I look that Rashford is only on 2 bonus points, by the way. Martial picking up, currently in pole position with a goal and an assist. But the overriding feeling, went into this podcast saying if I took 50 points, I'd be very, very happy. As it stands, looking at for I think I'll touch 60.
Oh, blimey. You've blown me out of the water there, mate. You've absolutely smashed it. I mean,
first time for everything.
I mean, you have done on some game weeks through this season. I wouldn't knock that at all. And yeah, it's a bit. I don't understand why Martial has got more bonus than Rashford. I mean, maybe it's to do with the passing, but the fact that Rashford has got 2 goals, Martial has got an assist and a goal. Yeah, I suppose this is.
As well.
Sorry.
I honestly am. Oh, is that a goal?
Oh, McGoldrick. Yeah, see, I told you that Sheffield United should hold on to McGoldrick. He's not too old. He's still got many. No,
he's scored 6 Premier League goals since Sheffield United were promoted. I think there's 2 against Manchester United. I think 3 against Chelsea and 1 against Arsenal. So, I mean, is that his... Was that Lindelof on the back of McGoldrick's head? I mean, yes. He doesn't... Oh, yeah, man.
Obviously...
He's still absolute garbage, by the way. So that's knocked him a point off his... So now I'll be very disappointed if I could break 60 points.
I hope you do. I hope you do, Ben. I've got my fingers crossed for you, because that 60-point mark will be a good one. At least one of us can kind of revel in a good game week, because...
I lost a late bonus point with Martinez as well. El Mohammedi come from nowhere. Push him down to 1 bonus point. So that's, if it happens that I don't break 60 points on the back of that. In fact, do you know what as well? I'm going to refresh this soon. And McGoldrick is, after that goal, if it's awarded to him, isn't going to be far off Rashford either. And Rashford might only get 1 bonus point.
Oh, no. That is an insult to you, mate. Oh, so now just a quick update. Because of what's gone on in this game, I now have a slight red arrow. So I go down from 564343 to 564577. So basically standing still, but ever so slightly going backwards. Not good. I was hoping to see a green arrow. Not very nice. But a positive thing for me is that I've broken down a little bit the point difference between me and the top 10k. It was 90 at the start of this game week. Now it's 87. So somehow I'm closer to the top 10k, but gone down. Bit confusing, but I suppose it's about all those around me. What kind of level will put this score put you at, Ben? What's your projected new rank with auto subs?
On my current position, obviously I dropped down to outside of the top 3 million, so I'll actually move up 1 million. But on me starting in the game week, it probably puts us up around about 500,000. Rating has went to 9%.
Oh wow, it's
on decline.
So I'm hoping that you keep the Snipes big green arrow, maybe even buoyed more by a late goal by Rashford.
I'm looking at Goldrick, given he's been watching the game, and this is why you find the bonus point system so frustrating. But Rashford is on. He's on 2 bonus points. He's went ahead of Martial, but McGoldrick on 56. 56. Rashford's only on 42. So it's going to be, and it looks as if I'm going to be on 59 points as it stands.
That is so annoying. One off the big 6-0. That's almost an insult to. If Rashford can get that elusive hat trick, then you'll be absolutely laughing about it. Ben, your audio's just gone a little bit off the last minute or so. You kind of dipped in. I don't know if it's distance from mic or.
Yeah, me getting excited for the match. That's what it is. I was saying I'll be dancing in the streets of Gateshead if Rashford scores.
Oh, lovely. Well, hope you make a video of it so that we can include it on the YouTube video. You celebrate and get the missus or one of your kids to be the camera person, because I'm sure the FPL community want to see that, because you'll be vindicated as well, sticking with Rashford as your captain for the season. So yeah, we've talked about Big Sam. I bigged him up with my little A-team intro, because I think he has got a little bit of class about him. You were less so, but more because of the treatment of Bilic. But we do have to talk about the 3-hit and blank game week in 19 and 18. I mean, this is going to be a difficult one. I'm going to be discussing this mentally for a while. I'll be discussing this on the podcast for a while, because this is going to take a lot of kind of headroom, a lot of brain work, because it's a really difficult one. But just before we get into it, I'll discuss it more once the game is over, so we can get full concentration on it. But just for people to understand, game week 18 is a blank for a lot of teams. So the only teams playing that weekend are Sheffield United versus Newcastle, Wolves versus Everton, Manchester City versus Brighton, Aston Villa versus Tottenham, and Arsenal versus Crystal Palace. And then you have a great double game week where there's a plethora of fixtures to choose from, and we'll be talking through the tactics there. But we're winding down the clock here. It's 92 minutes, 25 seconds. And Manchester United are a little bit on the back foot here. Sheffield United have the wind in their sails, especially after that McGoldrick goal. He's proving us wrong tonight, Ben. We shouldn't dare question Big Dave. He's just done fantastic bits and is an Irish legend. Brewster with an attempted cross, making one of his elusive appearances for I don't know what reason they paid so much money for. But we shall see if Sheffield United can get in with this. I hope they do. I think it would be quite funny. But I also kind of hope that Rashford does get that hat-trick, because we do all want to see you go out celebrating through Gateshead. I know he's just picked up a little knock there. He's got an injury. A bit of arguing between Solskjaer and Chris Wilder. I wouldn't want to go up against Chris Wilder in a fist fight. I mean, maybe this could be a series that we could focus on, but I think Chris Wilder would have Solskjaer for breakfast if there was a bit of argy-bargy. I mean, would you agree with that, Ben?
I think I'm having Wilder like over Ollie. Although, you know, he's a bit of a silent assassin. I don't like the you know, those boyish good looks, that little charm put you off. I think, you know, Ollie's maybe he's put with Pogba.
The great
Pogba's
agitator Pogba.
So Michael Oliver's booked. I don't know if it seems Ramsdale was walking away, but Pogba's being booked. It was obviously some kind of off the ball incident. Something was said. Is that handbags? Nothing much to get involved with. Nothing much to write home about. You just watching this bonus system. I've got no idea that Rashford's now moved up to 48 bonus points. How that came about. I mean, he's still behind McGoldrick.
Damned McGoldrick. I mean, he's achingly close to getting that 3 bonus points. I don't know why McGoldrick is getting it over Rashford. Maybe it's because Rashford has had more shots and less on target or something like that. But, you know, these are the kind of infuriating moments where it's a bit like the Coca-Cola recipe. FPL won't tell you the reasons behind these bonus points, but, a little bit of words there, but I think it all is sorted out there.
I think that was amicable, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was fairly amicable. I mean, we're just searching for a bit of drama here. But yeah, let's move it into what is going to be a big dominating factor over the next few game weeks, about squad building, about the use of chips, whether you should use chips at all. We've got the free hit blank game week 18. Now, the debate is obviously, do you do a free hit in game week 18 or do you do it later in the season? The first thing that I would say with these fixtures, I don't know, do you want me to send them over to you, Ben, or do you know the ones in game week 18 that I'm talking about? They're not the best of fixtures. First one is Sheffield United Newcastle, and probably might be a goalless draw. There's not going to be a lot of goals. There's not a lot of good FPL assets. Wolves Everton, again, 2 teams that I'm not too happy on. Calvert-Lewin's probably one of the only ones that you would own from Everton, and Neto, and maybe a defensive player like Kilman from Wolves. So a lot of the community might have some coverage of that game anyway. Manchester City, I mean, Diaz, De Bruyne are probably players that will be in your squad anyway, but also you don't want to load too much on them because of the Pep roulette wheel. Unless maybe Aguero is back to full fitness, then might be a consideration. And Brighton, you know, they're playing against Manchester City, not one to consider too much. Villa Tottenham, I mean, realistically, it's going to be a tight game. Tottenham will probably come out the victors in that. But the way Martinez is playing at the moment, you know, you could see a draw there. But that, again, it's not an appealing fixture. It's not like Fulham, you know, a whipping boy where you'd expect to see Tottenham score quite a few goals and open affair. And the final one, again, maybe I sound like a broken record, but it sounds like it's going to be a boring game. Arsenal versus Crystal Palace. Roy Hodgson, as we know, great defensive manager, will not be wanting to lose on that trip just north in an in a London derby, not a North London derby, but it is a derby nonetheless. And Arsenal can't seem to score for peanuts. Aubameyang seems to enjoy the back of the net. He found a goal finally this weekend, but still there are problems persisting at Arsenal. So I don't think a lot's going to change by game week 18 either, by the way. I think there's a lot of problems there. But looking at that and looking at the free hit, we know later on in the season there's going to be the FA Cup fixtures. We know that when it gets to the semi-final time, there'll be a lot of blanks and there will be another blank game week. And I think maybe you kind of steer your ship through this one, weather the storm, and maybe build your squad more with the double game week in mind. Because, like I said there, you'll have maybe one or two players from those teams there. Villa are obviously kind of popular, Tottenham are, Manchester City not so much, Everton, Wolves, but realistically there's not too many assets or too many kind of games there that look good. I mean, is that a problem that you foresee with game week 18 blank as well there, Ben? It's a bit of a boring one. It's a meh.
I think you're running the risk of you're running the assumption that this season is like any other, and that things will pan out that, you know, in a way that we inherently would historically expect them to. So, given where we are, given the schedule, the fixtures which are coming up, look, I wouldn't be making, for me, I'm not making any assumptions at this point in time. We've seen there's been lots of examples this season, and who's to say, you know, a team or a player doesn't start stringing a number of performances together, and all of a sudden, you know, a player gets 2, 3, or 4 goals over this period, and then almost becomes one of those must-own players. You touched upon, was it Everton? Is involved in one of those? Was that? I'll just double check that myself. Yeah. So in Wolves, for example, I mean, look, we've seen in Chelsea. Everybody was telling me, hold on to Timo Werner. This is his time. You know, Everton conceding, and they go out and they grind out a 1-0 result. They go to Leicester, they back off a 2-0 result. You know, maybe that's their turnaround, their kick-starting back into the season. Wolves got themselves a really good result the other night. We touched upon Daniel Podence. As well, it's looked at threatening his last 2 games. It was very unfortunate that not a goal, you know, and so, you know, all of a sudden, like I say, you only need a couple of returns from any of these players, and all of a sudden it becomes, well, actually, they're heading into that game week, then they're almost like a must own, you know. So I'm not getting suckered into this, you know. It's far too early for me. We're talking about, you know, almost like a full sort of 4 or 5 game weeks away. There's so much that can happen. There are so many opportunities for players to deliver, fail, pick up injuries, pick up suspensions. I still think, especially around this time, you've got to deal with each game week on its own merits, and I know that can sometimes come back to bite you. But you know, it's almost like when you talk about making your transfers at the start of the week, and then you run the risk of either, well, you may save a 0.1 or a 0.2 million here there, you know, through price rises, but what you're guaranteeing is you're going to have 11 players on the pitch because you've got all of the news to hand. You know, so on occasions, yes, you know, you may lose out, but over the course of time, the odds would suggest that you play it safe. You know, you play the odds, you're going to come out a winner, and I see that with this period as well. Almost like this is, you cannot plan too much because now is your early transfer. You know, you need to wait until you've got everything to hand towards game week 18 before then deciding, you know. And what my advice to everybody about chips is always the same. And people go, when's the best time to use a chip? I've got no idea. The best time to use a chip is you want you to maximize the potential of your returns. So it's unique for me, and I might see the game in a completely different way, but it's about that. So maximize your return and minimize the potential loss or the impact that it could have on your team. Now, if that situation arises for me in game week 18, then that'll be a time to bust out a chip, but it might be somebody else until game week 30, or or vice versa. That's why I never put anybody off using a wild card, for example. You know, you hear people doing game week 1 or game week 2. If that's right for your team at that particular point, then it's got to be done. So I kind of get my head around, like I say, when people holding the chips for a specific game week. Like for me, I will hold them for a double game week. I will always look to maximize my returns in and around that as best I can. But there's no way I'm setting it in stone and saying it will be used by this round, or I'm looking to bring in De Bruyne and round 18 because he's got those 2 fixtures. They've done the same at the start of the season. You know, they looked at United and City, who were blanking at the beginning, and it was, we'll bring Son in, we'll bring Kane in, and then game week 3 we'll bring in Fernandes, and De Bruyne's got some good fixtures, we'll bring him in. And Kane started delivering after that first game week, and the likes of City were poor. And people had all these templates set out in their own head that they had spent, the whole of the close season analysing and going through the data and thinking, right, well, I've got this, I've got my team set out for 10 weeks. There, it's looking great. And you might as well just rip it up and throw it in the bin, because it wasn't even worth the paper that was written on. And so for me, I don't see the point in wasting time on things which may never happen. That again, that people I may criticize for that as being not planning, but I've got better things to do with me. I'm the here and now. I look ahead. I'm not looking ahead to game week 18. I'm looking ahead to game week 14. I'm looking at what's happened midweek. I'm looking at those fixtures. I'm looking at who's in the form. And for me, it's points in the bank that count. I look at me game weeks in that. And sometimes if you have maybe 8 or 9 players playing on a Saturday, but you may have 50 or 60 points already accrued. And people are saying, oh, well, I'm on 30 and I've got 6 to play with me captain. Great. But look, I've got the points in the bank. Look at this game week. De Bruyne, blank. Fernandes, blank. Some of those big premium assets again. So take the money, take the points and run every time, and don't plan too far ahead for me. Look, that's my philosophy, and that's maybe why my overall rank is reflected in that. But I just put another spin on things. There is a different perspective of how managers can play the game. It doesn't always have to be this template or what the majority of people want to do in the community, and analysing things to the nth degree.
I mean, that's my kind of role here. I feel like I've been personally attacked, analysing to the nth degree. I'll just see myself out right now.
I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yes, no. But I think I do agree with your point here. And this is something that I've said, you've said many times, is pre-planning transfers, I think, is a dangerous game. And I do agree with you with that. My whole point is just keep an eye on the fact that game week 18, and I'm just talking through the options, but I've got no idea what I'll do. I think you hit the nail on the head. Anything can happen between game week 14 and 18, and it's the fact that it's during this festive period as well. We could have all sorts of injuries, all sorts of freak results, all sorts of teams could be going in and out in form. So I do agree with you. I think you're right in the sense that definitely not yet. You can't be making judgments and moving players around. But my point as well is that I don't feel easy yet about playing a free hit then. I do like double game week 19 though, so maybe we should move our attentions to that. And again, I know this is the future and maybe things will be so different then. But the fact that Liverpool have got Burnley and Man United looks good to me. United have got Liverpool, Fulham. Chelsea have got Fulham, Leicester. Southampton have got Leicester, Leeds. West Ham have got Burnley, West Brom. And Leeds have got Brighton and Southampton. There's some nice choices there. Maybe a free hit would be good then, or a bench boost. I mean, again, reiterating your point, it's whatever's best for your team, whatever suits it at the time. But I do just... My basic warning is keep in mind that there is a game week coming where there'll be blanks, and also there is a double game week, and it's a legitimate debate about whether you should free hit game week 18, double game week 19. There is a chance of a triple captain on maybe a Salah who's got 2 lovely games there. There is a chance of maybe playing your bench boost in game week 19 and having quite a few players from all those teams with double game weeks. There's even a chance of a wild card. Again, it's whatever works for you. But on the other aspect, I do agree with you that it's a little bit dangerous to pre-plan because anything can happen. And this is why we always warn against the early transfer in a single game week. Even 2 or the day before the deadline, you and I are warning, don't do early transfers. So to do a transfer now for game week 18, 19 is danger compiled upon danger, Ben. So yeah, I think you're right to almost intervene there. And this is why we love you, because you see differently, you bring the different vision, but on the same aspect, I'm kind of trying to warn people to keep it in mind, basically. Have that.
I definitely have an awareness, without a shadow of a doubt, have an awareness that it's there. But certainly don't nail your mast. I mean, the ones that screams out for me, I would look and I would say West Ham, Antonio, Burnley and West Brom on current form. Burnley and West Brom at home, but then you factor in that Antonio may or may not be fit. The Baggies may be mid-table by then under Big Sam.
Potentially Champions League. It could be Bolton all over again.
Oh God, gee, how I push! Yeah, it's a Christmas wish too far, my friend. it's a Christmas miracle.
It would be indeed. Just before we end, then, because I think that was like the big thing about this game week is. I wanted to say I'm happy that my little Christmas cracker pick of Adams is still paying off. He's doing bits at his price point, and just for people, he has the most XA of strikers over the last 6 game weeks and 11 chances created. I mean, that is a big creative force over the last 6 game weeks. And one of the things that I wanted to put to you, Ben, maybe my eye is a little bit too much on the fixtures, but I did the same thing with Wilson, but I do think Burnley are turning it around. My replacement for Wilson after next game week, potentially, again, this is a future transfer, but, this is one that I'm keeping in mind. Chris Wood from Burnley. Oh, there's a lot of pain in your eyes there. This is like my last evaluating point. Now, obviously, XGI over the last 6 game weeks isn't amazing. It's 2.19. But what I think, and my whole kind of belief around this, is the fact that I think Burnley are turning it around, but also the fixtures that they've got in the next 6 after that look quite good to me. And I think, maybe it's punty again. Maybe I'm kind of not premium switching, but kind of budget switching. But Leeds, Sheffield United, Fulham, they all look enticing to me as potential good games. We know that Leeds struggle against set pieces and physicality of the likes of Wood. We know Sheffield United can't keep a clean sheet at the moment, and I feel like Fulham is good. But then, as Anand has said, the XG shows that Burnley couldn't create anything tonight. So maybe it's a bit out there. But basically, the point is that I'm looking for a Wilson replacement because he's been damn disappointing. I'm hoping he does stuff against Fulham, but after that, he's got a terrible run of fixtures. The data isn't good anymore. And so, I don't know. And Angie, you can chip in as well. Maybe you can criticise me as well, because I feel like this is almost going to be a WWE smackdown of why would you have Chris Wood?
I think Burnley have been so heavily reliant on the likes of Chris Wood and Ashley Barnes in the last few years, and maybe Jay Rodriguez when he came in for Ashley Barnes, and the odd cameo from Metai Vidra. And it was always a big ask for those players to be performing over and above, their expectations, season on season. And I think that's partly why Burnley have struggled, as well as their injury problems. Just, Ashley Barnes hasn't quite hit the ground running yet, since the start of the campaign. Again, he's coming back off an injury that he was kept him out for more or less a good 9 months. Look at Chris Wood's a handful. I think Martinez pulled off a decent save from a header. He's always a threat from set pieces. I seen him against. He was clear through. I don't know if it was. Maybe he's lacking just a little bit of confidence. And I think with Burnley, you need, because they're not going to create massive amounts of opportunities, you need your strikers to be pretty much, on the ball. You need to be taking those, you're not going to be getting 4 and 5 chances a game. You're going to get 1 or 2. And that for me is a slight concern. I'm looking at who's creating in that Burnley lineup. Dwight McNeil is, he's a good young player with a lot of potential. I don't think he's, quite hit the ground running. Robbie Brady's still getting up to speed. Johan Berg-Gudmundsson's a decent player once we can get him, back into the squad. I know what you're saying about Newcastle. I have concerns about how Steve Bruce sets up his team. But if I'm looking at it just from the eye test, or just from what I know, I'm looking at who can create at Newcastle. You've got Ryan Fraser. I've got Miguel Almiron. You've got Alan San-Maxim. All players who are fairly direct, explosive, quick, good on the ball. You've then got John Joe Shelby, who can pick a pass. You've got players in that lineup, regardless of how Steve Bruce sets up his team and who they're playing against. I think all of those players are able to unlock a door with a key pass against anybody on just a split second. And therefore, the potential ceiling for me on Wilson is a lot higher than it would be on, say, a Chris Wood.
Yeah.
Just my opinion. I just like to say, even though Bruce can go uber defensive and go 5 at the back and go with a 5-3-2 or a 5-4-1, which he has done, you've still got, like I say, those players who are fast through transition. If with Miggy and with Maximum once he's back, and as well that Wilson's going to be at the focal point of that Newcastle team. Within that Burnley lineup, Daesh always goes 4-4-2, so it's going to be Wood and it's Rodriguez at the moment, and will they be sharing those goal scoring responsibilities? So as much as it would pain me, I just think the potential certainly lies with Callum Wilson.
Yeah, the potential does. I think it's the fixtures that annoy me. So maybe my focus shouldn't be on Chris Wood. I mentioned him already. Adams, he's in fine form in one of the better teams, or one of the best teams so far this season. the fixtures are all rightish, but I think the thing with Southampton is they're playing so well against anybody and everybody, so that they're doing quite well. Obviously, at the same price point, you've got Ollie Watkins as well. But again, it's the fixture turn for Aston Villa. You know, after this game week against West Brom, it's then Crystal Palace, Chelsea, Man United, Tottenham. That doesn't really appeal to me. There's more of a mix for Southampton, and they do have that double game week as well in 19. So, you know, Anand has come in and said there's quite a few cheap strikers already on form. Yeah, I agree. You know, I think Antonio, when he comes back, he's got to be in that mix as well, 6.2. If he comes back soon, game week 15 onwards, looks so good for West Ham. But it's just the fact that he can get injured. I'm not too interested in Allaire, even though he's been on fine form and, you know, he's looked fairly good recently with a couple of goals since game week 9. But yeah, I think it's just a couple of goal contribution. It's something that I'm going to have to look at from next week onwards, because I just don't want to keep Wilson in from then, because Man City, Liverpool, Leicester up next, sea of red. I think going into those games it's going to be difficult for Newcastle to get involved, because they'll set up not to lose, basically, which is understandable, you know. Watkins, so Anand has said Watkins, Adams I think's in there. I've already got Bamford, so he's already in the squad. There is plenty of options. It's just a talking point, as we do on here on a Thursday night. But that's all that I've got for this game week, Ben. Is there anything else that you want to add, apart from maybe reminding people of the competition to get involved with?
Yes, mate. Well, the competition, I mean, you so eloquently put it. I mean, you're much better than this. I mean, it's simple, really. We're giving away £50 Amazon voucher for Christmas. We're giving back to the community as a big thank you for watching us. All you have to do, it's simple. It's simple. You log on and register with the HotMic system, and you enter the Ben1Mic code, and you watch one of our live streams and comment in our live chat box. It's a simple 1, 2, 3 process. Register, code, comment, bang, and then you're in with a chance to win that £50. We will get that packaged up, and hopefully, you know, all being well, depending on which part of the world you're from, of course, you hopefully will receive that before Christmas, so in good time. Now, we will be doing the draw on Monday night on game week 14's final game. Is it West Ham and Chelsea, Mr. McKenna? Is that the game we're covering?
Yes, indeed. There's the Hammers and the Blues.
So we will have some fantasy involvement, and we'll be doing our talk along. Maybe the last one before Christmas. I'm not sure. Is Christmas falling on the Friday? We will confirm exactly when our next one is, but it should be a good one. Like I say, it'll be it's the last game week before Christmas, before the Boxing Day fixture. So we'll be doing a quick roundup with game week 14, with also a view to game week 15. So if you can come along, that would be great. And also you might win yourself a little prezi from Santa's Little Elves.
Yeah, we're the elves. We're doing Santa's work, and we're looking good. So yeah, I've just put it on screen there. Step 1, head over. It's put in. It's describing the emojis. Hang on, I'll have to remove that. It's on Twitter as well for everybody to get involved. But basically, as you said there, Ben, step 1, head over to HotMic, enter code Ben1Mic, comment on one of our live videos. Best one wins, and winner will be announced Monday. So, I mean, get involved.
We do have, I would say, I mean, look, this, I'm not giving too much away at this point in time, but what I would say is Anand is in pole position. Anand, you are doing very, very well in this competition so
Lots
far.
of entries. But if you can get your friends, family involved, obviously that gives you a higher chance. But Anand is in pole position, at the moment, and we're loving it, you know, because you have been a great supporter anyway. There wouldn't be anybody more deserving. But I think that nicely ends on a positive there, Ben. On a negative game week for me, a pretty good game week for you when all is accounted for. And hopefully game week 14 will push away that unlucky 13 and we see a green arrow for me and a green arrow for you in then. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye. A merry festive period because we'll be talking to you before Christmas. But for now, goodbye and have a good game week.
Yeah, guys, just echo those sentiments and thoughts of Jason. It's been another great one. Will be uploaded on YouTube. Follow us through socials, and we will look forward to seeing you again on Monday night. So that's all from the Premier Pundits. Thanks a lot, Anand. Thanks a lot, guys. See you soon.